1 year into the transition period of the new FDA Nutrition Facts label, we continue with Label Alert Extra. It's time to take stock, see what we have learned in the last year, what's changed or been clarified, and move forward with Step 5, Audit Process, Data, and Suppliers. But first, we'd like to thank our sponsor, SGS Co., whose generous support makes this series possible. Prime Label is proud to be a strategic partner of SGS in supporting the food industry in their transition to the new nutrition rules. Just over a year ago, the FDA announced their new rule and started permitting the new panels on packaging. November saw draft guidance on dietary fiber, closely followed in January with 2 draft guidances addressing questions on added sugars, vitamin and mineral data, and reference amounts customarily consumed. Then, after the Trump administration took office, the new commissioner of the FDA announced 2 things. First, in June, that the FDA will not be reopening the rule. In other words, they will not be modifying any of its core details. Then last week, the commissioner actually tweeted out that the compliance date, the date where the old Nutrition Facts panel is no longer permitted on new printed labels, that date is now most likely to be delayed 18 months until January 2020. This date is still under review, however, at the White House, but should be finalized soon. The USDA, which had not yet published a rule, or even proposed one, in November issued a notice allowing USDA-inspected plants to use the new FDA format on USDA labeling, providing that companies send in a label for approval in DC that shows the new format that they'll be using. Then in January, the Obama administration published a USDA proposed rule that almost exactly mirrored the FDA's new rule. This proposed rule was placed on the inactive list by the Trump administration in July, sowing some confusion in the industry. It's actually not too big a deal, though, because the net effect is that USDA companies can use either the new or the old format. But just know that this can be a complex decision based upon company, product, and competitive details. Prime Label has helped many companies make this decision, and we'd be happy to help you as well. Over the last year, Prime Label has created thousands of Nutrition Facts panels for its clients. An analysis of the new panel formats that we created found that most were FDA labels, but about 1 in 6 were USDA labels, which is actually consistent with market share distribution in the food industry. We also found that about 1 in 8 panels triggered the newly required dual column across a surprisingly wide range of categories. For example, fruits, vegetables, bakery jams, drinks, soups, desserts, and snacks. Overall, if we look at the categories that got transitioned to the new panel, you see in order of volume, fruits and vegetables, which have very little added sugar or processing, seasonings, condiments, dressings, and sauces, which come in small containers, drinks and mixes, bakery, desserts and sweets, snacks, and nuts. On the USDA side, we see quite a few sausages and dried meat products such as jerky, some entrees, and luncheon meats as well. Now, in addition to creating new panels, Prime Label has done thousands of label reviews in the last year. We've compiled a list of the most common mistakes found on the panels created by outside providers, and we'll use this list as the basis of our recommendations for what to change in your company processes, so that you can avoid making these same mistakes. The first and largest error is not modifying serving size for a new or updated reference amount. As you know, about 1 in 5 foods have updated or new racks, which are the mathematical foundation for serving size and determine all the other amounts on the label. If this is wrong, the entire panel's data is wrong. The second big error is missing or incorrect dual column NFPs. Many of you know that dual columns are now often required. There are 3 triggers for dual columns: net weight, inner packs, and unit size. We find folks don't know or use these triggers accurately and don't realize that calculations are not based on serving size, but rather rack values. Error number 3, using old recommended daily intake or daily recommended values when calculating the percent daily value. In the new rule, most daily value thresholds have changed, and the percentages must now be based on the new amounts. Number 4, errors in added sugars. These come from not counting the added sugar in purchased ingredients toward the added sugar amount, or not making the correct added sugar calculations for concentrated fruit juices and purees. Number 5, incorrect calculation of dietary fiber. Many may not know that the definition of this nutrient has changed, and there is a lot of confusion on what still counts as dietary fiber. Number 6, declaring folate incorrectly. This is a very tricky area, as the definition of folate has gotten a lot more complex. The final mistake I'd like to highlight is inappropriate use of a no added sugar claim. This is a very confusing area because, unlike all other nutrient claims, this one has a different definition from the one on the nutrition facts panel. Now, it turns out that all these mistakes can be caught if you audit your processes carefully. The first 3 errors occur in the data analysis process, whoever is providing you with a nutrition facts panel calculation. You should make sure that there are checkpoints to mitigate these first 3. Note that required dual columns are a brand new thing, very tricky and very misunderstood, and you should be sure that whoever is providing you with nutrition panels is thoroughly trained on this new requirement. The next 3 can also be caught in the data analysis process, but a viable alternative would be to hand these 3 areas over to your R&D department to define and own. R&D are the food science experts, and there is a lot of technical expertise and documentation required in these areas. Finally, the last claim error can only be caught in your final label review, so make sure you add this as a special case to this process at your company. Now, beyond auditing and modifying your processes, you may want to do some auditing of your data as a whole. Most companies have only a few racks, and by undertaking a product rack review, you can correct this very important error across entire product lines. Similarly, you can do a product set analysis for dual column triggers. This analysis will require additional data such as item and inner pack counts, which you will need to add to your nutrition database records. For number 3, QCing your nutrition analysis program to make sure that it has updated daily recommended values and RDIs is a quick way to mitigate this issue. Now, the next 3 are a bit more complicated. You can certainly do a product-by-product analysis and review, but you really need to start with training the team who is going to be responsible for this area. This is the most technical and confusing part of the new FDA rule, and company standards and procedures will have to be developed to deal with them. For the last issue, you can start as above with a product line analysis to see if you even use the no added sugar claim. But if you do, training will be super important for your marketing and regulatory team to have consistent quality control. Finally, we highly recommend auditing your suppliers. We live in a world with an extremely interdependent supply chain, and one supplier or bad data can hold up an entire nutrition panel transition project. You need to make sure that your suppliers are giving you the updated information for the new nutrients, added sugar, vitamin D, and potassium, and for the redefined nutrients such as dietary fiber and folate. But also that they have made the correct calculations. We have found many errors in suppliers' specification sheets. Many have not been rigorous in updating daily values and the other nutrients accurately. Check at least 2 or 3 specification sheets per supplier very carefully, as this will be your fallback documentation if the FDA comes calling. So now we've taken a look at the top mistakes made in the course of transitioning to the new panel and the importance of auditing your processes, data, and suppliers to mitigate these mistakes. The truth of the matter is that you can't have a panel without any data, and you can't have data without accurate information from your suppliers or foolproof checks in your processes that the data is accurate. Just remember, if this seems like an overwhelming task, you're not alone. Prime Label has nutrition label reform trainings to educate your regulatory, R&D, marketing, and management teams in the intricacies of this transition. We also provide product analyses and jumpstart services to help you make the job easier, and of course, you can outsource the entire project to us as well. So we hope that you've found this 5th installment of Label Alert Extra useful, and plan to join us next time for Step 6, Scope Resources and Costs. Thanks so much for your time. We wish you the best of luck as you navigate the tsunami that is nutrition label reform.